Well, good evening. My name is Rod Tarullo. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Golden. And thank you for being here this evening for this meeting on our open space master plan. So just to give you a little bit of background, back in 2016, we did a Parks and Recreation master plan. And as a part of that plan, we had a lot of citizen involvement and input, including a survey. And from all of those activities and information, it was very apparent that open space and natural areas and trails were very high on the list of important features in our community represented by our citizenry. And so we began to look at and think a little bit about how we could better manage and operate and acquire and preserve and use open space parcels within our city. We had some meetings with some folks that ultimately became stewards of Golden Open Space. We worked with the City Council and we got some funding to do a open space master plan. That was actually funded in 2020, and then something happened in 2020 called a pandemic, and we were not able to proceed. In 2021, we were able to proceed, and we hired some consultants to help us from a company named Great Ecology. And we began the process of this master plan. We see this as phase one, and it primarily deals with definition, mission, and vision for open space in our community. We would anticipate, and you'll maybe hear more about this evening, a phase two that would happen hopefully next year, where once we have mission, vision, and definition, we're able to articulate and identify specific parcels and then go into depth in management of these parcels, assessing them for their values in lots of different ways and all of that. So we're really at kind of the beginning of a process that will take us to have really good documentation and documents eventually to help us manage and operate open space in a manner that is very best for the parcels and for the citizenry. So that's kind of the background on how we have gotten to here today. One of the things that happened with the consultant Great Ecology, we had a handful of staff members that worked here in the Denver area with Great Ecology, and they ended up going to another firm. And so our contract was with Great Ecology, and they had gone to a new firm called Matrix. And so that made a little blip or a little hiccup in our process to get to this point. We have representatives here tonight from both Great Ecology and Matrix. So we are using consultants that have been on this project from the beginning, and they are now split between two different firms. So that's a little bit unique. But I'd like to introduce to you Ellie Garza, who is with Matrix, and she's with us tonight, and Liz Clift, who is on the screen there, and she is with Great Ecology, and she is out of state this evening. And so we have representatives from both firms and staff that have been working on this since the beginning. So I'm going to turn the time over to Ellie, and she'll take us along from there.
Okay. Howdy, everybody. Good evening. My name is Ellie Garza. Can you hear me good on the mic? Okay. My name is Ellie Garza. Like Rod had said, I'm a landscape architect with Matrix Design Group. I started this project with Great Ecology, and I'm here today to help provide meeting information for the Open Space Master Plan. So tonight what we're doing for the first portion of this presentation, or for the first portion of this meeting, is providing a presentation of what we've done so far to date, the work and effort that we've done for the master plan development, and getting together a working group and developing draft framework materials, as well as, after the presentation, provide some time for discussion, just to begin to provide feedback on the working materials that you'll see today, as well as to start to provide considerations that we need to be taking for the open space master plan framework at this time. So after the presentation, we'll have a time for discussion, and if it makes sense as well, we have the maps up at the back that we may be able to stand around and provide feedback to the city representatives and to myself. And we're looking to have this done by 7 p.m. so we could all get home for dinner. But thank you guys so much for providing your time this evening to be here tonight, and volunteering your time to provide your feedback and learn more about what we're doing for the Open Space Master Plan. So to introduce a little bit more about the team that City of Golden got Parks and Recreation Department hired for this master plan, Great Ecology, Matrix, and Shift Urban Design and Planning was made up of landscape architects, planners, ecologists, and educators. We've approached this with a multidisciplinary approach, just looking at this, knowing that when you're talking about systems, open space systems in particular, there's very complex considerations and layers that we all have to look at, that not one person from one background or experience really should be looking at on their own. So our backgrounds are really lending to an ecological focus and the ecological approach. As ecologists first, especially coming from Great Ecology, we look at this with this lens of function, base, and the holistic considerations of how these systems function and how they function best, and how we can maintain and manage these so that they are functioning in a correct way for the health of the system, as well as the system services that they provide to the community. And then I also want to reintroduce Liz Clift. She's the floating head here on the screen. She's here to lend another set of ears to hear your feedback tonight, while we're moving forward from what we hear tonight to help inform the working material development. Liz Clift, her background, she is a writer, editor, an ecologist, and a science communicator. So this is really her passion, to be able to develop written materials, which is a master plan at the end of the day, and really to be able to bring that and leverage that experience. I wanted to open the presentation with this quote, and a lot of tonight is going to be reading, synthesizing, and then responding. So to start off, we're looking at a quote from the EPA that shows that locally based long-term open space conservation plans really do help communities to protect their environment, improve quality of life, and preserve critical elements of the local heritage, culture, and economy. This really shows that there is a top-down approach occurring, as well as we know, grassroots and local efforts that know that these spaces are very important, and we need to consider them a little bit differently than may have been considered before. Well-managed open space programs protect a community's natural green infrastructure, providing places for recreation, preserving important environmental and ecological functions, and enhancing the quality of life. This quote, I would like to set the tone of what we kind of talk about tonight. When we're talking about phase one of an open space master plan, we're really talking about overarching values and themes that we can then use to direct and funnel into more site-specific considerations. So we're really talking about some large considerations here, as to why I wanted to show that quote. So why does this matter, and what are we doing? And I know a lot of you guys know why this matters, is why you're here tonight. But to reiterate from what Rod was saying, there was a need that was presented from the Parks and Rec Master Plan Development in 2016 that showed that these open spaces actually don't need to be and shouldn't be managed and maintained the same as parks and recreation facilities. And with that, there was this opportunity that came where we could look at these open space systems and provide management considerations specific to them. And so with that, we're here at the very beginning. We're waving the flag saying we're starting this and we need to get you guys involved because, as you know, public land planning efforts need to be public-led processes. We're just now introducing this to you, but you haven't missed anything. After this meeting, we'll be opening a public survey as well to provide another opportunity to get feedback from you guys. From if you don't feel comfortable providing any open feedback tonight, we also have comment cards, just another way to provide your understanding to influence this master plan, because as the residents of this and or visitors of Golden Open Space, you know these spaces so much more than a Denver consultant team could know. So we really need to find ways that we can tap into your expertise to be able to help guide the development of this plan. So that's what today's meeting is looking to do. And so there will be portions of this where we show the working group working materials, and at that time I'll ask you guys just to hold any considerations till once we open up the discussion moving forward through the presentation. So to start off the master plan development, one of the first key items that we wanted to do was develop a working group. This is kind of a technical task force, if you will, developed from these 8 groups where we solicited volunteers to be able to come and provide their free time to help give us information on how to develop these framework materials. So we got to work with one member from each of these teams, one of these groups that are within Golden. As well, you can see the City of Golden had advisory board members that are particular, that still influence master planning of these open spaces, so that they are also involved to provide their feedback from their role in the City of Golden. So having these working groups from local group members to provide feedback was the number one thing we wanted to start with. And we were able to get them started and giving feedback at the beginning of this year. So as I've said, information presented tonight is for review and is to be able to see where we're at, to get feedback to help to continue to revise and make it to the point where we are ready to present this as the framework for the Open Space Master Plan. It is all draft material and is still available to be refined based on your feedback. And as you guys saw from the maps posted around the room, I wanted to provide more information too on where we're talking about in space. We may be talking about overarching considerations, but at the same time we're talking about a real place right outside our doors. Sometimes the open space, Golden-owned open spaces typically are abutted right up next to Jefferson County open space. Sometimes these little gems are just the way that you are entering into these larger open spaces, and so they end up getting lumped together in consideration. And that was really the point, to show here on these maps where we are talking about in the City of Golden boundary of the city. And really just showing that the policies that we can develop with this effort can only really influence these spaces. We are and have, as you saw, Jefferson County Open Space provided a member as part of the working group to help us consider how we're looking at managing these spaces. So we're looking at them as a partner and working together as they continue to update their open space policies as well. And just to give a little bit more of a background on where we started at the very beginning, before we were able to start engaging with the working group, we needed to do our own homework. And we we weren't able to do a full assessment of the open spaces within the City of Golden, but we were only able to get a quick taste running through the open spaces to be able to inform us of what we're looking at and talking about and managing. So that is why it's critical that we engage the public to help us know further about these spaces that we were able to visit in a windshield tour capacity with the time that we had, and really being cognizant of what we can do with the phase 1 effort. So this helped us to start to get a leverage on where we're talking about. And of course, as a Colorado resident, yeah, I've of course visited as well outside my free time, and that also helps to influence our understanding of the spaces and just seeing how people are using the spaces as well. All right, so that was a little bit of background of where we were, and now we're kind of moving into the working materials. And I wanted to lead in again with another quote. This one is from a man named David Suzuki. He's a Canadian scientist, author, and environmentalist who's known for his ability to make scientific and environmental issues relatable to the public. And he quoted, "Unless we are willing to encourage our children to reconnect with and appreciate the natural world, we cannot expect them to help protect and care for it." Again, I'm really trying to frame our effort here as not as taking ourselves out, really considering today, but also thinking about the future and what the legacy will be leaving. All right. Through our efforts, when we first started this, we were working with the working group to develop these materials, as well as held a handful of meetings with the City of Golden's Park and Recreation Department to develop these initial framework materials. And it really came to a head that it showed that there is intrinsic value in these open spaces that offer these natural, historic, and cultural resources. And as responsible stewards of the land, Golden, including the visitors and residents, can support the overall adaptability and resilience of open space through appropriate use, access, maintenance, and monitoring. Sometimes when you're looking at the materials that we're developing, there may be words or phrases that may not seem familiar or may seem redundant. Along with the working definitions that you'll see for the mission, vision, and open space definition, we are going to be providing a glossary of terms, the definitions of these words that we're using to describe the mission, vision, and definition. People from different backgrounds and areas of expertise may have different understandings of what these words or phrases mean and to an ecological context. And that's okay. We welcome the discussion. We want that to be a part of this refinement, because at this point we have an opportunity to be precise with our words, which will help to guide management actions in the future. Okay, and then first piece of the open space master plan that we began with developing is the mission statement. So we had to put on our shoes before we could walk, and so we got to start somewhere in developing these initial pieces of the master plan. It was the first spot that we knew where we could find success and hear feedback provided from the community through the working group efforts. So what is the mission statement? Why is it important? It guides long-term planning, policies, and/or programmatic processes. And it reflects what we're doing today, right now. The best master plans are never just put on a shelf to gather dust and never thought of again. Usually there's an iterative process where you come and revisit it and you see, how did we do? What is our mission, how did we follow our mission statement? Or is it still guiding us today, or should we revisit this? So the idea is to kind of take this snapshot of City of Golden's initiatives for the open space master plan and what they want for the mission for that master plan document. The way that we developed this statement was we took a very scientific approach, I would say, and looked at how others were doing it and did a lot of research to understand what has been successful mission statements that have been implemented within the state of Colorado. So what you'll see here will be representative of that research, as well as the iterative process we went through with reviewing it through the working group members and as well as working with the City of Golden Parks and Rec Department. All right, so here I'm going to ask you to read and review this mission statement, and I'm going to provide some time after I read it out loud for you to read it to yourself, jot down notes, if anybody grabbed a comment card, just to see what your considerations are for this material that you would like to provide us feedback during this meeting. So the working mission statement is currently to conserve, preserve, and steward Golden's open space, to support the health of these spaces and enrich the quality of life for Golden's residents and visitors through meaningful connection to open space today and in the future. Now, this mission statement for the open space master plan is really considerate and wants to work with the Golden Parks and Recreation mission statement. I meant to read that to you guys before, but I'll go ahead and say it now so that you can have it in your head of what the mission statement for the Parks and Recreation is, and that is to promote and provide safe and comprehensive community facilities, programs, and services to enrich the quality of life for all residents and visitors. That was the Parks and Recreation Master Plan mission statement. So that's the Parks and Recreation, and this is the open space. All right, and now we're moving into the vision statement. A vision statement is how Golden wants to position its open space areas for the future. How do we want to see these open spaces used? How can we encapsulate this into one sentence, not a long run-on sentence, of what we want to aspire for the vision of this master plan document to be? Maybe not what we're doing today, but we want to see tomorrow. And the same thing, the way that we developed this was through an iterative process where we're looking at existing vision statements throughout the state of Colorado and other municipalities and towns to see what may be working and makes sense. And then as well working with the working group to develop and transform this into a Golden specific vision statement. I'll do it the right way this time, and I want to read you the Golden Parks and Rec vision statement. So this is the Parks and Recreation Master Plan vision statement. It is, Golden will be recognized as a national leader in the provision of high quality parks, trails, and recreation facilities. And I'll do the same thing where I'll read this out loud and then I will pause to let you review it in the way that best works for you. The working vision statement for the Open Space Master Plan is to provide a high-quality, diversified open space system that supports nature, history, and people to foster an enduring legacy of wonder. All right, and that brings us to the open space definition. Open spaces include geologic, paleontologic, cultural heritage features, and natural systems. We know what the land use code may have defined as what open space is, but for this open space master plan, we are looking to define it for what we value and have that imprinted inside of this definition. This definition will help to guide considerations, management considerations today and tomorrow and aligns with the themes identified by the Golden Vision 2030 effort that was recently done, where there were values similar to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan update that were identified from the community, that they value natural areas for the natural beauty, the proximity to open space, and preserving the ability to experience these, the natural beauty of unique geologic features and unbroken stretches of natural environments that define Golden as a place. These considerations were taken into the development of this open space definition, and again, as I mentioned for the mission and vision, this was done working together with the Parks and Recreation Department and working group members to review and refine the definition. So the working definition, as I will read it here and then pause one more time for you guys to review it on your own, is those lands owned or acquired by the City of Golden whose purpose is primarily conservation or preservation, and that are managed to maintain, improve, or adapt the ecological and or historical integrity of the parcel for future generations. All right. So I've gone through and introduced where we've started for the Phase 1 Master Plan development and the working materials that we've got to date that we're looking for your feedback on tonight. What will now be also open is there will be an online public survey to get response and feedback from the community to help guide the framework development, which will ultimately lead into Phase 2 of the Master Plan, where we're looking at specific considerations as we're drilling down a little bit further into how we can manage and maintain these specific spaces in the open spaces of Golden. So the survey will be open tonight, or it's currently opened, and will be available through August 10th for you guys to take to go online and take it. You shouldn't have any issues with being able to have multiple people take it on one computer. Of course, we ask not to take more than one survey, so that way we're not modifying the responses. And this information that we'll get tonight from you guys, from the discussion that we'll have right after this, as well as the comment cards and the public survey, will all help to refine the framework materials that we've got so far. This will help to develop this final Phase 1 packet that we will provide, that ultimately would love to provide to City Council so that they can understand what we've done and to get their approval so that we can look at 2023 for the Phase 2 Open Space Master Plan continuation. So from here, we'll be able to take in the feedback that you guys provide, re-review where we're at with the mission vision definition and the wording that we use there, and then apply the values that you'll be providing in the survey to help refine these materials and guide the considerations for Phase 2. All right, and with that, I would like to open it for discussion. It is 6:40, so we've got about 20 more minutes, and so I'd say we can just have an open discussion here, and then if it makes sense, we could potentially get up to and look at the maps.
Yeah, here, I'll help guide this. Hey,
Okay.
I'm Emily Gideon. I'm the Communications and Community Engagement Manager for City of Golden, and I've worked with Ellie, with Liz, with our Parks and Recreation Department and our working group on the materials so far. So for this discussion section, we're a little limited with a cord here. So what I'll do is, if you're able, you can come up and ask a question into the mic. And if not, then I will listen for it and I can reiterate it to the group. So we have about 20 minutes for that, and as we've talked about a number of times tonight, we are going to have an online survey available for everyone to take. You can take it, right here in the room, or you can wait till you get home. And we're going to be doing a lot of promotion of the survey so we can get feedback from the community at large about, feedback on the mission, vision statement, and definition, and help to really shape that from community feedback. So I think we've already got a few people all right over to this
I'll
gentleman.
shout it from here.
Shout it, okay.
Can we review the maps as a group? And specifically, two things I would like to review are the location shown for Kinney Run
Okay.
as opposed to the Magic Mountain archaeological site.
Okay, so we're gonna go back and look at the maps for Kinney Run, and the Magic Mountain archaeological site, yep. Sorry. There we go.
So I think you have labeled the Magic Mountain archaeological site as Kinney Run, whereas the actual site for Kinney Run is farther north, just to the, say, the southwest of Eagle Ridge. Would you agree with that?
We were using just parcel data available on GIS to label these. We did not provide the specific name of the area, so that is an error that you've caught, if that's correct.
I use the parcel data too, so I'm intimately familiar with the parcel data.
Okay. Yep, it was just labeled based off of what GIS told us. Would you want to call for the ones you see?
Sorry?
Would you want to call for the next one?
Sure. I see someone in the tie-dye shirt.
Yes, I'll speak loudly. I just have a question about this survey. So your definition, your mission and vision statement will be available with the survey, so as we're taking survey, we can review it again.
So the survey is going to be looking at more information about demographics, use, and values of the open spaces. We did not provide the specific working definition, the mission, vision, and open space within the survey, just so that we could get the feedback here tonight on that information, and then further information that would guide the considerations for that would be provided in the survey.
And a second question, thank you very much. And the second question is that survey going to be open just to Golden residents or to everybody in the world?
It's open to all. Open to all. So we're looking for feedback from residents and from visitors, and we've asked people to identify. And it also includes, City of Golden employees if you come in and work in the city and live elsewhere. So we'll be able to look at data delineated by folks who live in the City of Golden and folks who live outside.
So in essence, you are letting the world decide how Golden is managing their open space.
Well, since a lot of people, Golden's open spaces are used by folks who live outside the city, folks who live here within the city, so we want to get feedback reflecting the attitudes of people who are using the spaces.
Is survey asking, are you a resident or not?
Yes, it does. It asks if you live here in City of Golden, or if you're a visitor, if you're an employee of the city, if you work for a business here within the community. There's a couple of options for how folks can self-identify, and so we'll be able to see, if there's a strong delineation of preference among folks who are residents versus folks who, don't live within the city and all of that. So we have specifically asked for that feedback.
But there is no way to verify the answers.
No. Okay, yeah, we can.
Just had a follow-up question. Do I understand that the maps as presented tonight are not going to be put up on Guiding Golden, or are they going to be put up on Guiding Golden?
Yes, the maps are up on Guiding Golden.
And I recall Tom's question, I think, and I had a brief conversation with Rod about this, I think the naming nomenclature may refer to the actual original transaction name as opposed to commonly used names.
Yeah.
So I would urge you to, if you're going to publish those, do an AKA, also known as the Covered Ridge or something like that, so people don't come back to you and flood
Yeah.
the airways with the same question.
That's a good flag, and I'll reiterate that so we can get that for the recording. This gentleman mentioned that some of the parcel names on the maps might reflect what the original purchase or, a different name or nomenclature than what it's commonly known as. So we can do a review of that to be sure it fits with how the community or neighborhood would identify it.
You mentioned something that was done in 2016, and I remember that there were a lot of surveys. I mean, I remember taking some surveys quite a while ago. It was probably even before 2016, frankly. So what has been done before, and how is that informing what you're doing now?
Okay, so the question was about, the master plan, I think from 2016, and doing some surveys that inform what's led to today. Rod, do you have any context on that might be helpful?
Can you rephrase that question?
Yeah, there was some mention of something that had been done in 2016, and I don't know what that was, but I recall years ago taking quite a few surveys about the open space, and I mean, I've seen changes with an Apex Park, which is south, how it's, bikes versus people. How is those surveys and what was done before being used to inform what you guys are doing now?
Okay, thank you. I think I understand. So the city is famous for surveys. We do a lot of surveys in a lot of different areas and ways. The specific 2016 Parks and Recreation Master Plan survey was a statistically valid survey. The survey that we're doing for this open space phase 1 is not statistically valid, and we acknowledge that fully. From the 2016 plan, we have worked with the PRAM board, our advisory board. We've worked with Jefferson County Open Space. We've been able to specifically address some of the challenges that we've had on South Table Mountain with the Lubon Trail and the Olivine Trail. We've been able to go in there and reconstruct Lubon, which was in great need to have that happen. We've also worked on some management principles with Jeffco for that specific area to have Jefferson County actually provide management in that area of the small parts of city-owned parcels that we have there. So those are a couple of examples of things that have come from previous surveys and feedback that we've gotten from the citizens. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, I see a question over here. I haven't called it over here.
Are any of the open space areas that are identified right now in potential danger of being developed for commercial or residential?
Okay, so the question was, are any of the open space areas identified at this point in danger of being developed commercially or residentially? Is that the question?
The designation ever changed? Did they ever lose their open space designation?
That is another question I think Rod could probably answer a little better than I could.
So what's interesting is because we have not ever had an official definition of open space, a lot of these parcels have been called different things, and some of them are identified as open space by one definition and identified as open space by a different definition. And the parcels that you see on the maps that are on the survey and on the back wall, those represent properties that are owned by the city that in some form or fashion could in fact potentially fall under this definition that we hope to arrive at through this master plan. So is there a possibility that one of those may end up not being open space? Possible. Likely not, but possible. And there might be other parcels that the city owns that would fall in the category of the new definition of open space that we just don't know yet because we don't have that definition. For everything that you see on that map, I have no knowledge of any of them being in any way affected towards anything other than the passive use that they have today or the current use that they have today. I'm not aware of any residential potential elements, commercial potential elements on any of those. So this is not trying to, it's to define so that we all agree that this should be open space, and because it's open space, we want to manage it a certain way. And that management piece comes with phase two. It's not, this is not trying to preserve something that we're afraid is getting away from us. Is that helpful?
So what I hear you saying is that this isn't set in stone.
That's
This
correct.
is now.
We think it's pretty darn close, but it may not be absolutely perfect. And we need to measure this against a definition once we get a definition. That's our intent.
And we have a question right there.
Will the definition help protect it? If you define it that way?
So the question is, will the definition help protect the property? Potentially, yes.
So, I remember years ago, there was as people were talking about open space, they would talk about active open space and passive open space. Active was like ballparks, and passive was more like hiking and mountain biking, and but leaving the surrounding land essentially wild. Is that still the definition that you're working with here, or are all these mostly passive?
We're trying to come to a definition that everybody can agree on and understand. And just in point for what you've suggested, a lot of people, when you think about open space and active recreation, that may be more along the lines of hiking and cycling instead of ball fields. And when some people say passive may not really have any recreation on it. It would be unavailable because of preservation of certain elements and things like that. So that's part of the challenge. This is exactly why we're doing what we're doing, is we want to be able to have everybody have the same picture in their minds when we're using words to define things about our open space.
Right, I'm just curious, but all of us here would probably agree this is a pretty important meeting. I'm curious why it wasn't in the transcript, or why our fellow neighbors didn't know about it. And then I have one other question.
Well, we have been on a fairly short lead time trying to pull this together. We had hoped to have it a few months ago, but because of the transition and changes that I mentioned with the consultants earlier, we weren't able to do that. We're trying to have some progress made so that we can be ready for application of funding through the budget process this year for 23 and 24. And so in order to try to compensate for that, this is being recorded, and it will be up and available for people to view and see, and then give other and more feedback between now and August 10th. So we're trying to help with that circumstance.
And I appreciate that feedback. Under working vision statement, to provide a high-quality, diversified open space system that supports nature, history, and people to foster an enduring legacy of wonder. And my concern is sometimes there are situations where we wonder where did it go because of its popularity. I could cite what's happening with the tubing, and I could cite a few more, but I think you can appreciate what I'm saying. And I would maybe this particular one rework. Can you appreciate what I'm saying?
Yes.
Thank you.
Repeat what she said for people.
Yes, so what I'm hearing is the wording for the working vision statement, considering the nature, historic, and people to prevent, let's move to that one, how about that?
Foster an enduring legacy of wonder.
To foster enduring legacy of wonder. Your consideration is more towards a...
Well, locals, we sometimes wonder about our quality of life because someone has mentioned at other meetings, it's like you don't go out on weekends because
Right.
the
Yeah.
town is overtaken. And
Definitely.
thank
I
you
think
for listening. Thank you.
I appreciate the response, and I think that's something that we're always trying to look for a balance is how much can we share from these valuable resources that a lot of times people don't realize, even though they're visiting it, they can impact it in a negative way. So we're really trying to focus on finding that balance because at the same time, people won't know how to love it if they don't understand it.
Isn't that our job to not have it not advertise all the more when we already have a good amount quality control, that we have a good amount coming into Golden. Maybe we don't need to quite sell it.
Definitely. That was definitely some conversations we were having, is not necessarily to identify these, on the GIS map somewhere that people can go and route, find a route to get there. This is kind of stuff that we know that is an open space where we're really approaching it with the land first. Right here. Sorry. And then, I'm sorry, you've been this is why I'm not good at it. You go first and then you're next, sir.
Okay. One of the qualities of open space for me is silence. Is there any consideration of preserving silence?
Thank you. I'll reiterate the question. I think you said it loud and clear. Is there any consideration for silence? One of the wonderful virtues we get from open space. Our cities and urban areas are constantly crowded with noise, bombarding us, and we get this opportunity to find this solace out in these spaces where we can hear the birds chirping and be able to identify what species that is just based on their song and what time of year we're hearing them. I think that that's a very valuable comment. Because you said it now tonight, we'll be sure that that's something to know, that even just the quiet of the open space is something that is so valuable to these spaces.
It's not clear to someone who's been through this process for months now exactly what the final product will be at the end of this year and what you're doing. So tell me what that is, then we'll follow the question.
Yes, I'll reiterate the question. So the question was, what is the final product that we're working for to develop with the phase 1 of the open space master plan? Is that correct? So what we're looking to do is encapsulate the mission, vision, and definition in a framework development document that will also include definitions of the words that will be used within these definitions, and provide this document to City Council to see the effort that's been made and the community-backed work that's been put into it to be able to fund that phase 2. So it's
Okay, so this is not a master plan that you're creating at this stage?
That's right.
Okay. Carry this into next year. What's the next document that you see happening?
That would be the open space master plan. So the framework materials that we're developing with this phase will be used to be incorporated into the final open space master plan. There will still be an opportunity to refine as we go and assess the open spaces and learn more about site-specific considerations. But at this time, it's just the framework materials.
The reason I'm asking, there's a lot of confusion that we've heard from Rod, that what we're talking about is the management plan next year, which is a very different document than the master plan. And so I want to make sure that we're talking about a master plan that comes out of this process and not a management plan, which is totally different in scope and what its purpose is. So I'm telling the clarity there.
Yeah, I think that's right, and we'll be very clear on that on all of our materials, just to be crystal clear about what the work product is from this process versus what comes next. I just wanted to chime in because it's getting towards the end of the hour, so maybe we'll do 2 more questions and then we'll stick around and be around for more questions. Did you want to go?
I'm confused about the process. So my understanding is that you have come up with these proposed mission, vision, and definition statements. But then there's going to be a survey that is not providing those, but instead is asking questions of the world about their uses of the open space or other things that don't have anything to do with the mission, vision, and definition, but somehow the world's responses are going to inform any revisions to those statements. So can you tell us exactly what that means and what are the criteria that are going to be used? Who's going to be developing those criteria? Are you going to share those with us? I mean, it seems to me that it's pretty critical what the process is to refine those, if there is any refinement. Particularly, I guess I'm also quite concerned that anybody can answer these questions and provide input into that may influence Golden's mission, vision, and definition of our open space.
I can take a shot at that, and that's something, although Liz is remote right now, I can follow up with her on some more answers to that because she helped to develop the survey as well. And I think the idea and the purpose behind, instead of in an online survey format saying here are the working, mission, vision, and definition, and let's wordsmith it online back and forth. I think the idea is trying to get some real world feedback about, how are you interacting with open spaces in Golden? What are your values? And trying to get some data and feedback on that and helping to, once we hear, okay, X percent of survey respondents are really their number one thing is wildlife watching and, or cycling or, seeing what kind of feedback we're getting from there and helping that take those uses and the values that we're hearing from people and informing and helping to wordsmith on the back end from that and from this conversation as well. So that is sort of I think, methodology on that. And again, we can follow up with more information on that, but that was sort of how we're thinking of an approach.
It's pretty general. I mean, I appreciate you're trying to define it, but I think I would be more interested in what are the specific criteria. What if you get 5 responses from outside Golden that said, we want to do this in the open space in Golden, and you have 5 responses from Golden residents?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to me that a more, can't find the word, I want to say respectful to Golden residents approach might be to do a postcard survey to Golden residents, to Golden households, and at least have that be the predominant influence.
And we are going to be, this is going to be in the next informer that goes out, that goes to every mailbox of everyone living in Golden. So it's going to go straight, it will be delivered to folks' mailboxes, and we're going to be trying to get online responses as well. But Ellie, did you have any other follow-up? Yeah, I'll add to, so we really saw this as a tiered approach for public input, mostly looking at the work that the working group put into developing this. And we know that this is going to be a statistically invalid survey, but there needs to be a way that we can provide some space for people who are not able to make it to the meetings, are not able to be a part of the working group, and maybe they're not, within the city boundaries, but still are very much influenced by these spaces. It's a hard, and at the same time, it's like, how can we really gatekeep to make sure only the people in Golden are able to respond, even if it's a postcard. Somebody else could pick it up and respond to it. So it's trying to walk that fine line of how we can get input, but not let, a statistically invalid survey define the development of these. We're looking at really the working group has really led that effort. Okay.
In the back, I don't think I've heard a question from you.
So again, with regard to the survey and opening it up to people outside of Golden, I think that's going to give a skewed picture because people outside of Golden mostly come to Golden for recreation. And Rod has made the point that a lot of people confuse the 400 acres that is Golden's open space with the surrounding surrounding Jefferson County open space that they come to for recreation, so they're going to answer that survey. I must have made it really clear on the survey that we're just addressing the 400 acres, not the surrounding Jefferson County open space, and make that really clear, and put maps on the survey. But honestly, I don't think people outside of Golden should have any voice in what we do with our open space. And where is the voice of the wildlife? And the people in Golden have probably a very different set of values for that space. It's in their neighborhoods. They enjoy seeing the wildlife, sharing our neighborhoods with wildlife.
Yeah.
It is something that I think a lot of us value and don't want to jeopardize that by influx of people who want to recreate in our neighborhoods.
Well, go ahead. I'm glad you asked that question. So the question is about, having the survey open to folks who, live outside Golden, and is there going to be an influx of folks who are taking the survey that might skew results? And beyond that, are folks going to understand the difference between City of Golden open space versus Jeffco open space? Because as Ellie mentioned, a lot of the City of Golden's open space does come right up to and provides an access point to Jeffco open space. So we were really thoughtful about that specific item in the survey. We have specifically in a question asked people to open up and look at the maps and to say, please review, this is City of Golden identified open space. Do you understand that it's different from Jeffco open space? So we have a specific question where people run through and are asked to look at the map. So we've identified that issue in that way. And I think our specific marketing of the survey is really going to be targeted to folks right here in Golden. As I mentioned, it's going out in the Informer. It's meant for people who are part of the community here in Golden, and that extends beyond the city limits. There's folks who come here and work here, folks who come and play and enjoy it, and they might recreate and use it differently, or there might be lots of crossover, and that's something we'll find out from the survey. But we did want to ensure, because it is being used and realistically used by folks in the community, outside the community, we wanted to get feedback that reflected that. But it's, it is not a statistically valid survey, so it's something, it's one tool in the toolbox of how we're gonna help inform what this looks like. And this is not the final management plan, this is helping to inform mission, vision, and definition. We're already at 7:10. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand it over to Rod to kind of close this out, and then a number of us will stick around and we can chat and we can look over at the maps together and get a little bit more one-on-one time to get some feedback.
Thank you. I'd just like to let you know how much we appreciate your time in coming tonight and for the thoughts and comments that you've shared. They're very valuable, and we appreciate that. And we see this as just one piece of trying to hear from as many of our citizens as we can. And so thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. And please feel free to jump on those QR codes to look at the survey, or do that when you get home. And if you have other feedback and comments, we welcome those emails and phone calls and things like that. So again, thank you, and we appreciate you spending a little time with us tonight.